Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing well tonight. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'm always excited to see people joining from different parts of the world. Tonight, I have a brand new story for you. Settle in, listen all the way through, and when it's over, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these relaxing stories. Your support helps me create more peaceful stories for you. Now, dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and if you'd like, turn on a fan. Let its soft, gentle hum become part of the peaceful atmosphere around you. And before tonight's story begins, gently close your eyes, rest your head on your pillow, take a slow, deep breath, and allow your body to relax. Let go of the worries of the day, quiet your thoughts, and simply listen as we drift into tonight's peaceful journey together. The busyness of the night was slowly fading away from the world. In the distant sky, the last light of the afternoon was dimming and blending into a gentle shade of blue. It was as if nature itself was quietly preparing for rest, little by little. If you are listening to this story with your eyes closed, then slowly take a long breath and feel all the busyness around you gradually drifting away. The last light of the afternoon was dimming and blending into a gentle shade of blue. It was as if nature itself was quietly preparing for rest, little by little. If you are listening to this story with your eyes closed, then slowly take a long breath and feel all the busyness around you gradually drifting away. There was a small town in America called Willow Creek. The town was not very large, but every street, every house, and every morning seemed to be covered in a strange veil of peace. In front of the small wooden houses were rows of flower gardens. In the morning, the aroma of freshly baked bread would drift from the little bakery on the corner of the street. Right beside it stood an old bookstore, whose windows were decorated with books of many colors. At one edge of Willow Creek town was Silver Lake. When the light of the morning sun fell upon it, the water of the lake would sparkle like silver. For that reason, many years ago, the local people gave it the name Silver Lake. The tall pine trees standing around the lake always swayed in the gentle breeze, and with that breeze came a sweet fragrance. Right beside Silver Lake stood a small wooden cabin. Although the cabin was very simple, it held a certain warmth within it. On the porch of the cabin were 2 rocking chairs, a small flower pot beside the window, and in front of it a wooden dock where an old boat would always sway peacefully upon the water. People called that cabin the Whispering Cabin. No one knew who had first given it that name. But in the evening, when the breeze came across the lake and passed through the needles of the pine trees, it felt as though someone were softly whispering an old story. Perhaps it was because of that mysterious yet peaceful sound that the name had spread. The new resident of that cabin was named Thomas Elliott. Thomas was a retired school teacher. For 40 long years, he had taught history to children. His life had been filled with the laughter of students, the sound of school bells, and the scent of books. But as time went on, he came to understand that there comes a moment in a person's life when one no longer seeks answers amid the noise, but rather within the silence. His wife, Ellen, had passed away many years earlier. Their children were living in laughter of students, the sound of school bells, and the scent of books. But as time went on, he came to understand that there comes a moment in a person's life when one no longer seeks answers amid the noise, but rather within the silence. His wife, Ellen, had passed away many years earlier. Their children were living in distant cities with their own families. Thomas was alone, but he never feared loneliness, because he knew that peace is never found in a crowd of people, but rather hidden within one's own inner silence. A few days after retiring, he arrived in Willow Creek. The moment he saw that small wooden cabin standing beside Silver Lake, he felt as though this very place had been waiting for him for many years. From then on, every morning began with a cup of hot tea. Before dawn broke, he would sit in the rocking chair on the porch and slowly sip his tea. Mist floated above the lake, and when the first rays of sunlight touched the water, a peaceful smile would appear on Thomas's face. Sometimes he would take the little boat out to the middle of the lake. There was no sound there, only the gentle ripples of the water and the distant call of a bird. In that silence, he would feel how beautiful and how peaceful the world truly was. As the day came to an end, the sun would slowly disappear behind the pine forest. Golden light would stream into the room through the cabin windows. The warmth of the old fireplace, the scent of the bookshelves, and the gentle breeze together filled the entire room with a strange sense of tranquility. When night fell, Thomas would sit in his favorite armchair and open a book. Outside, the waters of the lake remained quietly awake in the darkness, and the soft sound of the wind through the pine needles seemed to bring back that invisible whisper once again. And on that very night, as countless stars were reflected in the waters of Silver Lake, Thomas did not know that the dawn of the next day would lead him down that old path through the pine forest, a path that would slowly awaken the memories he had forgotten for many years. The next morning, as the first light began to appear on the eastern horizon, Thomas Elliott awoke to the hazy glow filtering through the fog gathered on the window panes. Inside the cabin, the warmth left over from the previous night's fireplace still lingered softly. Outside, a light mist floated over Silver Lake, and in the distance, the tops of the pine trees were gradually becoming clear in the gentle morning light. As he did every day, he prepared a cup of hot tea and sat down in the rocking chair on the porch. Holding the steaming cup in his hands, he gazed toward the sunrise. The world seemed not to have fully awakened yet. There was such a silence all around, one that did not feel like emptiness, but rather like a deep peace. After finishing breakfast, he decided that today, after many days, he would walk along the old path inside the pine forest. Putting on a light jacket and taking his old wooden cane in hand, he stepped out of the cabin. At the beginning of the path, the night's dew still sparkled upon the grass. The tiny drops of water shimmered in the morning light like beads of glass. As soon as he entered the forest, he could hear the gentle songs of birds. Somewhere came the call of a robin, somewhere the light tapping of a woodpecker. The familiar fragrance of the pine trees drifted through the air, and it always filled his heart with a strange sense of tranquility. Beside the path, a little squirrel busily pushed aside the dry leaves in search of nuts. Thomas stopped and stood for a while, watching the tiny creature. Seeing the simple busyness of the little animal, an unconscious smile appeared upon his face. After walking a little farther, he suddenly saw a deer standing peacefully. There was no fear in its large eyes. For a few moments, the man and the animal silently looked at one another. Then the deer slowly disappeared into the dense forest. Thomas continued walking. There was such a deep silence all around that even the sound of his own footsteps could be clearly heard. From time to time, when the wind passed over the tops of the pine trees, the needles would raise a gentle melody together. Hearing that sound, he felt as though the forest itself were slowly and peacefully telling an old story. After a while, he reached an old wooden bridge. Beneath the bridge flowed a narrow stream. The clear current of the water struck against the rocks and produced a soft sound. Standing in the middle of the bridge, Thomas listened to that sound for a long time. Suddenly, he remembered the days of many years ago. In his childhood, his father would take him fishing beside a stream near their village. He had forgotten those days for many years. The smiling face of his father, the aroma of warm bread drifting from his mother's kitchen, the memories of running across the fields with his friends on summer afternoons, all of them slowly began to return. He realized that memories never truly disappear. They merely sleep in the depths of time, and a peaceful morning or a familiar scent awakens them once again. After resting for a while, he slowly began making his way back home. By then, the light of the afternoon sun was falling through the gaps between the pine branches, creating golden patterns upon the ground. There was a gentle warmth in the air. In the distance, the waters of Silver Lake shimmered. Returning to the cabin, Thomas prepared a simple lunch. Then he sat beside the window and opened a book. From time to time, he would lift his eyes from the pages and gaze out toward the lake. Outside, time was slowly moving toward evening. As evening approached, the colors of the sky began to change. The golden light gradually deepened into a rich orange and disappeared behind the pine forest. Night quietly descended over Willow Creek once again. But that night was different, because the sky was perfectly clear. Countless stars shone like tiny points of light scattered across the black velvet of the heavens. And upon the calm waters of Silver Lake, their reflections seemed to create another sky. That night, Thomas decided that he would light a small fire outside the cabin and open once again the old diary that had remained closed for many years. And hidden within the pages of that diary were memories he had not touched for many years. And hidden within the pages of that diary were some memories that he had not touched for many years. That night, the sky above Silver Lake was clear and deep. Countless stars were shining silently, and their light reflected upon the calm water of the lake, as if creating another sky upon the breast of the earth itself. Thomas Elliott was sitting beside the small campfire in front of the cabin. In his hand was a steaming cup of hot tea, and resting upon his lap was that old leather-bound diary that had remained closed for many years. The soft flames of the fire occasionally swayed. The wind flowing through the pine forest was making such a gentle sound through the gaps in the leaves that it felt as though the dark night itself was softly whispering some old story. Thomas stared at the diary for a long time. How many years had it been? He could not remember the last time he had opened these pages. Perhaps it was a few days after Ellen had gone away. Then, little by little, he had closed many doors of memories within himself. But tonight was different. Tonight, the silence all around seemed to be calling him back to those old days once again. Slowly, he opened the first page. The pages had become yellow with the touch of time. In some places, the color of the ink had faded, but the words still seemed to hold warmth. The first pages were filled with memories of his life as a teacher. On one page, it was written, "Today I told my students that history is not only the stories of kings and emperors. History is the memory of people, and within memory is hidden the truth of the heart." After reading the sentence, a gentle smile appeared upon his lips. He remembered little James. The boy always sat on the front bench. Even after class was over, he never forgot to ask questions. And there was little Lucy, who always drew small flowers in her history notebook. How many years had passed? Perhaps those children had grown up now. Perhaps grey color had touched someone's hair. Perhaps someone's child now studied in school. Time truly moves forward silently. As soon as he turned another page of the diary, his eyes stopped. A small piece of paper had been tucked inside the fold of the page. Lifting the paper into his hand, he recognized Ellen's handwriting. In the gentle light, he slowly read, "Wherever you are, may peace be your companion. And if the world ever becomes too busy, then stop for a moment and look toward the sky. I believe that peace is always waiting." A drop of tears shimmered at the corner of Thomas's eyes. But those tears were not of sorrow. Rather, they were of deep gratitude. He looked toward the sky. The stars were still shining just as before. Ellen had gone away many years ago, but her love seemed not to have been lost anywhere. It remained within memories, within some old words, and within those quiet moments that people never completely lose. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Then all around became silent again. Only the gentle song of the crickets, the sound of pieces of wood cracking in the fire, and the whispering of the pine trees. After a long time, Thomas stood up. The fire of the campfire was slowly dying down. He gently closed the diary and returned inside the cabin. Sitting in his favorite armchair beside the window, he kept looking at Silver Lake shining in the moonlight. The reflection of the moon was swaying upon the water with the soft waves. The night was becoming deeper. The last warmth of the fireplace was spread throughout the room. His eyes were slowly becoming heavy. But just then, he noticed that some clouds had begun to gather in the western part of the sky. The smell of wet earth was floating in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a very gentle sound of thunder was heard. Thomas smiled softly. It seemed that perhaps tomorrow it would rain. A peaceful, gentle rain, and on that rain-soaked morning, perhaps his new day would begin with the warmth of the fireplace and the company of a beloved book. In the final hours of the night, while the town of Willow Creek was still wrapped in deep sleep, the clouds gathered along the western edge of the sky slowly began to spread over Silver Lake. Somewhere in the distance, a very gentle rumble of thunder could be heard, as if the sky itself were softly making its presence known. Thomas Elliott awoke to the first pitter-patter of rain upon the roof. He opened his eyes and lay still for a moment. The world outside seemed to have changed. In place of the star-filled sky from the previous night, there was now a soft covering of grey clouds beyond the window. Amid them, the raindrops fell in a peaceful rhythm upon the wooden roof of the cabin, creating a sweet melody. Thomas smiled gently and sat up. He had always loved mornings like this. Slowly, he placed a few dry logs into the fireplace. Within moments, the flames sprang to life. A warm orange glow spread throughout the room, and together with the sound of the rain, created an atmosphere of deep tranquility. Going into the kitchen, he placed a kettle of water on the stove. Before long, the aroma of hot tea spread throughout the cabin. Holding the steaming cup in his hands, he sat down in his favorite armchair by the window. Raindrops slowly slid down the window pane. Outside, the waters of Silver Lake had become hazy beneath a veil of mist. The distant pine trees seemed as though nature itself were painting them in soft shades of grey. There was no need to hurry anywhere today. Today was simply a day of peace. From the bookshelf, he took out his favorite novel. Although he had read the book many times, each page was as familiar to him as an old friend. The warmth of the fireplace, the hot tea in his hands, and the gentle melody of the rain outside, all together made time seem to slow down. Around midday, he went into the kitchen and prepared a bowl of hot vegetable soup for himself. On a rainy day, even this simple meal seemed to carry a special flavor. After finishing his meal, he returned to his seat beside the window. The raindrops were still slowly sliding down the glass. The scent of wet earth drifted through the air. Somewhere in the distance, another soft roll of thunder could be heard. But even that sound held no fear. Instead, it seemed as though the sky itself were humming a lullaby. Toward the afternoon, the intensity of the rain began to lessen. Little by little, light started to emerge from behind the clouds. The raindrops gathered upon the pine needles sparkled like tiny pearls beneath the faint sunlight. Stepping outside onto the porch, Thomas took a deep breath. The fresh scent after the rain filled his heart. A light mist floated above Silver Lake. Such a silence had settled over everything, as though the entire world had been washed clean and renewed. Before evening arrived, he returned once again to the inside of the cabin. The fire in the fireplace was still burning softly. Slowly, night descended. At last, the sound of the rain came to a complete stop. Willow Creek returned once again to its familiar silence. But deep in the night, before falling asleep, Thomas looked beyond the window and saw that mist was slowly beginning to gather over Silver Lake. And somewhere in the distance, waiting for the arrival of dawn, the first birds seemed to be silently arranging their wings. The last watch of the night was then slowly moving toward dawn. In the clear air, after the rain, a thin layer of mist was floating above Silver Lake. The sky had not yet become fully bright, but somewhere far below the eastern horizon, the sign of the arrival of the unseen sun seemed to be slowly spreading. Thomas Elliott woke up very naturally. Not because of the alarm of a clock, not because of the call of busyness, Only through the gentle invitation of the silent world did he open his eyes. Inside the cabin, a slight warmth still remained. He slowly stood up, put on a soft sweater, opened the door, and came out onto the porch. Seeing the scene in front of him, a peaceful smile appeared upon his lips. White mist was floating over Silver Lake. The little boat tied beside the small wooden dock was very gently swaying with the waves of the water. The world seemed to be resting somewhere between sleep and awakening. After some time, somewhere in the distance, a robin bird called. Then another one. Little by little, the silence of the forest began to fill with the gentle songs of birds. Thomas walked down toward the wooden dock. The mist floating upon the water had always seemed especially beautiful to him. He went to the boat and ran his hand over the old wood. The little boat seemed to be his companion of many years. The water of the lake was completely calm, so calm that the reflections of the distant pine trees had clearly appeared upon the water. After some time, he slowly began walking along the narrow path beside the cabin. After the rain, the ground had become soft. The smell of wet grass was mixed in the air. The drops gathered upon the pine needles were sparkling with a gentle silver glow, even before the morning light had appeared. As he walked, it seemed to him that many precious moments of life are truly like this. Not any great event, not any festival, only a peaceful morning, a slow step, and being united with nature, breathing silently. After returning home, he put water on the kettle for tea. Within a short time, the familiar fragrance of hot tea spread throughout the cabin. Holding the steaming cup in his hand, he came once again and sat in the rocking chair on the porch. Just then, the first golden line appeared in the eastern sky. Little by little, the mist began to become thinner. Receiving that golden light, the water of Silver Lake seemed to begin transforming from silver into golden color. The birds of the forest had now completely awakened. The gentle wind was whispering through the branches of the pine trees. The town of Willow Creek had still not completely awakened. These silent moments of the world had always been the dearest to Thomas. He slowly closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and felt how strangely beautiful this ordinary life is, how peaceful, how complete. Just then, the first light of the sun beyond the horizon spread across the entire lake. The tops of the pine forest glowed with a golden radiance. Lights began to appear in the windows of a few distant houses in Willow Creek. And Thomas realized that another new morning had arrived. An ordinary morning. Yet within it is hidden extraordinary peace. And in the light of that new morning, looking at the reflection of the sun sparkling upon the water of Silver Lake, Thomas Elliott silently felt that perhaps the most beautiful gift of life is not any great event, but rather these peaceful, ordinary, and gratitude-filled moments of every day. The morning sun was slowly rising higher into the sky. Golden light spread across the calm water of Silver Lake, creating countless tiny, sparkling points. As light fell upon the tops of the tall trees of the pine forest, it seemed as though nature itself had dressed in gentle colors for the new day. Sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, Thomas Elliott slowly took the last sip of his tea. Willow Creek had also begun to awaken little by little. In the distance, smoke was rising from the chimney of the bakery. Across the road, Mr. Harold was slowly going toward the market with his bicycle. In the window of the bookstore, Mrs. Carter was arranging some new books. There was no hurry anywhere around. Everything seemed accustomed to moving in a peaceful rhythm. Thomas kept looking at these ordinary scenes for a long time. At one time, he used to think that happiness meant achieving something great, seeing some new place, busy days, countless plans. But age had taught him something else. Sometimes happiness is even within a cup of hot tea. It is within the smell of wet earth after the rain. It is within the warmth of some old memory. And sometimes it is even within watching the morning sun rise silently. That day he returned inside the cabin and once again took the old diary into his hands. This time he opened a new page. After many days, he began writing something again. Slowly, he wrote, "At dawn today, I watched the sunlight fall upon the water of Silver Lake. It seemed that the world had not given me anything new. Rather, it reminded me how precious that which had always been truly is. Peace was never far away. I myself had forgotten to see it." After finishing the writing, he closed the pen. Then, looking outside the window, he smiled gently. The wind was once again blowing through the pine trees. That familiar whispering sound. Perhaps it was because of that sound that many years ago someone had given this cabin its name, the Whispering Cabin. But now Thomas knew that the whispering was not any mystery. It was the slow song of nature, the gentle call of memories, and the language of such a peace that only people who have learned to move slowly can hear. Before evening came, he walked to the wooden dock. The water of Silver Lake was as peaceful as before. The little boat was swaying upon the gentle waves. A few white clouds were floating in the sky. He took a deep breath. Then he stood silently with his eyes closed. No hurry, no regrets, only gratitude. Because, having reached the final stage of life, he had come to understand that ordinary days are truly the most extraordinary. And while the world was slowly moving toward another evening, that little wooden cabin beside Silver Lake remained standing peacefully. The whispering of the wind through the pine leaves drifted by. The last light of the sun silently faded upon the water of the lake. And Thomas Elliott, sitting in his favorite rocking chair, slowly closed his eyes and once again felt that familiar peace within himself, as though the world was saying to him very softly, "Everything is all right. Take your rest. The night is peaceful. And tomorrow, too, the sun will rise."